Hello and welcome to your lesson on functions. Today, you are going to be able to define a function and be able to distinguish between functions and non-functions. This is also your notes, so you can put your name and section there if you'd like. We're going to watch the video over here together in class. If you miss it, please click the link here and watch the video. Okay, so first thing is relation versus function. So a relation is simply a set of inputs and outputs. Any set of input values and output values is a relation. A function is a special type of relation a special type of relation where each input has exactly one output. Exactly one output. Okay? So it is a special type of relation. So when I say relation versus function, every function is a relation, but not every relation is a function. Okay? So relation is just a set of inputs and outputs. A function is a special type where each input has exactly one output. Make sure you're getting this down in your notes. So functions have domains and ranges. Domain is the set of all input values. So your domain is the set of all of your input values. We'll also use the word input to describe them. They are your x values. They'll be on your x-axis of a graph. It is your inputs. Your range is, if the domain was the inputs, the range is your outputs. So that is the set of all output values. So we will also just call this output. They'll also call this your y, and it is always graphed on the y-axis. So sometimes we'll also refer to domain as your independent variable. Think back to when you were in science class, your independent variable is always on the x, and y is your dependent variable. It's the one that depends on the other. Okay? So let's look here. Here we have a function machine. This is the way some people show functions. So each value here is an input or a part of my domain. Each value here is an output or a part of my range. So you see each input value has one output value. Can we figure out the rule for this? Let's see if we can figure out the rule for this. So if I put in 4, I get out 11. If I put in -1, I get out 1, 2, 7. So we need to figure out what we're doing. Well, first thing I can do is I can find the slope. Remember, slope is our change in y divided by our change in x, delta y versus delta x, or y minus y over x minus x. So here I have two y values. So I can do 11 minus 1 over 4 minus -1. Well, I know minus negative turns into plus. So this gives me 11 minus 1 is 10. 4 plus 1 gives me 5. Well, 4 over 5 just gives me 2. So that's the slope. Because remember, these are y equals mx plus b. In this case, I know it's linear. So here's my m. Here is my y-intercept. When x is 0, y is 3. So my rule here is y equals 2x plus 3. And that works for all of those. So here, if I write the rule in words, I can say multiply by 2. Then add 3. And then they want us to add a few more values here. So if I put the value 1 times 2 is 2, plus 3 is 5. If I put the value -2, -2 times 2 is -4, plus 3 is -1. And let's try the value 10. 10 times 2 is 20, plus 3 is 23. So this is how our function machine works. It creates a table and an equation. So let's talk about how we determine is it a function when we're looking at a table. Let's look at example 1 first. So remember, a function is a set where all of our input values have exactly one output value. So let's look at our input values. I notice I see -1 listed twice. And they have different outputs. -1 had an output of 4 and an output of 7. So this is not a function because -1 is repeated. So this is not a function. -1 has 2 outputs. Let's do the same thing looking over here at our example 2. I have my input values x, my output values y. Now I notice that there are 2 outputs of 1. But remember, when we're talking about if it's a function, we're talking about does each input have more than one output. So I notice each of my inputs is unique. So this is a function. Your outputs are allowed to repeat. Your inputs are not. Okay, so let's look at what that would look like in a different form. What if I'm looking at a graph? If I'm looking at a graph, remember that my input is my x, my output is my y. So on a graph, how can I tell if my inputs repeat? So if my inputs repeat, then I'll have points directly above and below each other. So inputs repeat if there are points directly above and below each other. So points directly above and below each other. And I mean directly above and below. So we use something called the vertical line test. That means if I had a vertical line, would it ever touch any points on my graph or my graph more than once? So if I come here and I want to go over the vertical line, I see there's no points directly above and below this point, nothing directly above and below this point, nothing directly above and below that point, nothing directly above and below that point. That means that one is a function. Let's look at the next one. I have points directly above and below each other. I'm going to go ahead and draw a line there so I can make sure I can see why this is not a function. Those 2 points. So this one is not a function because those 2 points are directly above and below each other. And the same thing over here. I notice these 2 points are directly above and below each other. So this one is not a function. Remember, it does not matter if they have the same horizontal line. So the fact that these 2 are here does not mean it's not a function. The fact that these 2 are here does not make it not a function. Well, what if we have a continuous graph like the ones at the bottom? If we have a continuous graph, I can still see that there's points directly above and below each other. So this one is not a function. Same thing with my circle. I got lots of points directly above and below each other. So it is not a function. And then finally, we got this last one. There's a lot of points that are really close, but there's nothing directly above and below. If I held a vertical line, I could never touch that more than once unless I turned it sideways. So this one is a function. This one is a function. Okay, so I want you guys to go ahead and do your classwork and ask any questions you have in class. I'll see you there.